It is said that somewhere beneath the folding dunes of the old desert, where the wind speaks in the tongue of ghosts and the sun leaves no mercy, lies a chamber that remembers everything the world has forgotten. They call it the library beneath the dust. Not of brick, nor of mortar, nor of wood that breathes in the heat, but of silence, sealed in layers of sand so ancient they no longer remember the rain. The story begins with a traveler. No one remembers his name, or perhaps he had none. He walked as one who followed echoes rather than roads, led by the faint curve of symbols half buried in stone. At dawn, he saw them glint like scales of a sleeping serpent, the forgotten script of those who once whispered to the stars. By dusk, he followed them into the belly of the dunes, where the wind fell quiet and the air smelled faintly of something eternal, a mixture of dust and remembrance. It is said the first door was not carved but sung into being. He found no hinges, no threshold, only a smooth wall of stone that seemed to breathe beneath his palm. The earth trembled lightly, as if recognizing him, and a seam opened, spilling a sigh of cool air, older than any human dream. With the last light of day flickering on his torch, he stepped inside. Beneath the desert skin, there was no darkness, only the dim amber glow of time itself. The chamber opened like a lung, exhaling centuries in slow motion. Rows upon rows of tablets, stacked not in order but in rhythm, curved around him in concentric circles. Some were cracked, some hummed faintly, as if remembering language long after its speakers had turned to dust. He raised his torch, and the flame shivered, not from wind, but from the breath of the stones themselves. Symbols began to move under the light, their edges rippling like water. The walls glimmered with star maps, constellations unknown to the modern sky. Whispers tell us that this library was not built to keep records. It was built to listen. Each slab of stone was a vessel, capturing the vibrations of words once spoken before the dawn of writing, the murmurs of dreamers who had tried to name the cosmos. It was here, so the ancients believed, that the universe first learned the sound of human wonder. The traveler walked slowly, the echo of his steps joining the soft pulse of the place. He felt the air grow heavier, scented with minerals and memory. His eyes fell upon a central pillar, carved in spirals that mimicked the pattern of a shell, or perhaps the swirl of galaxies. At its base lay a single object, a clay tablet, unbroken, marked by the crescent of the moon. He knelt, and as his shadow merged with the symbols, the chamber stirred, a low hum rising like the first note of a song too vast for language. Some believe that in that moment the traveler ceased to be alone. He began to hear voices, faint and layered, overlapping like waves. They were not ghosts nor gods, but the residue of human thought itself. Every whisper that had ever been spoken in wonder, every prayer uttered into the night, every name lost to sand. They circled him, forming an invisible choir. He closed his eyes. In the dark behind his eyelids, he saw visions, not of men, but of moments. A hand pressing the first word into wet clay. A woman tracing stars into sand before dawn. A child listening to thunder and calling it divine. The traveler realized that these were not memories of others, but echoes that had always lived within him, fragments of the world's original conversation with itself. There are those who say that the library beneath the dust is the earth's own diary, a record not written for eyes, but for silence. And those who enter it must offer something in return. A memory, a breath, a word never spoken aloud. The traveler offered his torch. Its flame dimmed, then disappeared, drawn gently into the walls. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the sound of his own pulse. Then a shimmer. The walls began to glow faintly with light not of fire, but of remembrance. Every tablet shimmered as if exhaling the weight of centuries. He walked deeper. The air thickened. The silence grew alive. On one wall, he found a carving of a circle within another circle, an ancient symbol scholars would later call the breath of the world. Around it were etched words in a language that was not written but felt. Before there were kings, there were listeners. Before there were gods, there were echoes. Before there was silence, there was the sound of stars becoming dust. He ran his fingers across the inscription, and the stone vibrated softly, almost like a living pulse. In that instant, he understood. This library was not hidden from humanity, it was hidden for it. Guarded by the earth, waiting for the moment when someone might listen, not to learn, but to remember. The traveler sank to the ground, his hands coated with fine, glittering sand that shimmered under the dim light. The particles felt alive. Fragments of language so ancient they could no longer be spoken, only felt between breaths. Outside, the desert wind began to howl again, carrying with it the faintest tremor of the chamber's hum. The sands shifted, perhaps closing the path behind him, perhaps opening it further. No one knows. Whispers tell that he stayed there for 3 nights. He did not eat. He did not drink. He simply listened. By the end of the 3rd night, the walls began to crumble softly. Not in ruin, but in release. It was as if the library, having been heard, could finally rest. He gathered one fragment, a shard no larger than his palm, etched with a single curved line that looked like a breath turned to stone. He held it to his ear, and in the stillness he heard a single word. He never spoke it aloud. When he emerged from the dunes, the wind had changed. The sun hung low, pale and tired, and behind him the sands already swept over his footprints. He turned once, expecting to see the faint outline of an entrance, but there was none. Only the shimmer of heat, the mirage of eternity folding in upon itself. It is said he never returned to any city. He wandered the edges of maps, speaking little, his eyes filled with quiet knowing. Those who met him said his presence felt like the moment before dawn, that delicate hush when even the earth holds its breath. Perhaps the library beneath the dust never existed. Perhaps it was a mirage woven by longing, the soul's attempt to remember its first language. And yet, somewhere in the desert, there are nights when the wind falls completely still. If you listen then, truly listen, you may hear a faint vibration beneath the sand, as though something ancient is breathing in its sleep. Some say that is the sound of the library waiting once more, dreaming beneath the dunes, its words curled like fossils in the silence. Others believe it was never a place at all, but a memory within us, buried under the layers of time, waiting for the right moment to be read again. Whatever truth lingers there, it asks for no discovery, only reverence, for not all knowledge wishes to be uncovered. Some truths were written only for the silence between heartbeats. And as the desert night deepens, with stars scattered like forgotten pages across the sky, the story fades into its own echo, soft, endless, dust returning to dust. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. It is said that in a valley where fog sleeps even at noon, there rests a city carved from stone that remembers light. Not white stone, not marble with the gleam of quartz, but a quiet, moon-marked crystal that drinks the day and returns it as breath. Travelers who approach do so softly, for the valley has a way of catching sound and turning it inward, as if every footstep must be weighed against the hush that came before. The first glimpse is not towers or gates, but reflections, broken pieces of the sky lying along the ground, shards of blue and silver spread like the feathers of a fallen star. Some believe the city sank, not into earth, but into itself, folding its avenues into chambers, its chambers into corridors, and its corridors into a single sigh. The invitation is a stair, narrow and patient, descending from the fog's edge into a plaza where the wind forgets to move. A traveler stands at the top, wrapped in a cloak the color of dusk, and places one hand upon the stone rail. The rail is cold, though the sun is kind. It hums with a faint echo, as if a distant choir is trapped beneath it, singing a note that never ends. The traveler listens. The stair vibrates underfoot. A swallow schemes the air and vanishes into mist. And then, with the slow acceptance of water filling a vessel, the traveler descends. Beneath the fog, the city reveals itself in fragments. A colonnade whose pillars tilt toward the east, their capitals shaped like open hands. A boulevard paved in hexagons, each bearing a shallow cup, as though designed to catch raindrops and save them as memories. Doorways tall enough for giants, yet narrow as a breath. Statues that face not outward, but toward one another, locked in a circle of silent conversation. Some say this city was built by those who believe that sound is sacred, that every word should be weighed, that every breath should be borne in reverence. Others whisper that it was a sanctuary for the fugitive hours of the world, a place where lost moments came to rest, and were carved, carefully, into stone. The traveler walks with slow steps. Each step answers itself from far away, as if the city is both near and endless. The air tastes mineral, like a cave that has learned the alphabet of wind. The fog thins into veils that cling to windows and archways, softening corners, turning the hard into the tender, the visible into the half-seen. On a wall near the plaza, an inscription curls like a river of script. Where memory fades, echo becomes the keeper. The letters are shallow, fragile, threatened by time's thumb, and yet they hold. The traveler traces them. The wall vibrates, almost imperceptibly. A tone rises, round and bell-like, then settles, like a bird folding its wings. There is, at the heart of the city, a hall known in the oldest stories as the Chamber of Lingering. No roof, only a ring of pillars that hold up a bowl of air. In its center stands a pedestal of black stone, polished to a dark mirror. When the traveler steps close, their face appears and disappears with the whim of the fog. Along the rim of the pedestal are grooves, thousands of them, minuscule, spiraled, delicate as the ridges of a shell. Whispers tell us that these were cut to cradle words, to catch them as they fell from the lips of priests and mothers and shepherds and kings. Here, it is said, a voice could be given to the stone and would not be lost, even when the body that carried it was dust. The traveler leans near and breathes. The pedestal receives the breath and gives it back as a sigh, not identical, but kin. It is a soft, oceanic sound, like shore water in a cave, like the hush of a temple at midnight. The traveler speaks a single word. Not a name, not a plea, not a command, only a word that feels round in the mouth and ancient in the chest. The pedestal answers with a ghostly twin of that word, stretched as by distance, warmed by time. The city replies. From a colonnade, a note returns. From a stairwell, another. From a window that looks upon nothing but mist, a third. The echoes fold together until the traveler stands within a woven shawl of sound. Thin threads, luminous and weightless, strong enough to hold sorrow without breaking. Beneath the silence, a story stirs. The city, it is said, was raised by artisans who harvested crystal from a mountain where the stars once slept. They learned to tune stone the way a musician tunes a harp, chamber against corridor, corridor against square, so that a soft word could cross the entire city without losing its gentleness. In that age, war was loud, and loudness was thought to be victory. But these builders believed in the sacredness of quiet, and they made a place where the world's noise could not enter. People came who were tired of shouting, who had forgotten the sound of their own breath. They spoke to the stones, and the stones remembered them. It is said that children were taught to say their names into the hall at dawn, and at dusk to listen for those names coming back, changed only by tenderness. Lovers vowed to one another in the Chamber of Lingering, not so that the city could witness, but so that, should forgetfulness come, the city could remind them. Priests recited star-marked hymns in tones so soft the letters trembled rather than traveled. And still the colonnades took them up and carried them like lanterns to the corners of the valley. Even the wind learned to lower its voice. But cities are built not only of stone. They are built of time. And time, marked by the moon, marks also with erasure. A drought came, or perhaps an empire. No one is certain. The records, if they existed, live now in dust. What is remembered is only this: one morning the echoes did not return. Words that had always come home stayed wandering. A mother spoke her child's name into the pedestal, and the name did not find its way back. The artisans gathered in the chamber of lingering and listened, and the city offered only the breath of fog, the metallic taste of emptiness. Some believed the crystal had been exhausted, its memory filled beyond bearing. Others believed that the valley had learned so much grief from the world beyond that it closed its mouth and would not repeat it. The traveler listens as these unsheltered histories brush past like garments on a night line. He imagines the artisans, hands gray with dust, faces lit by the shy glow of cold stone, pulling threads of resonance from the air the way a weaver draws yarn from wool. He imagines a child, grown, returning to hear her own name and finding only the city's patience, which is larger than comfort. He imagines a last ritual, perhaps at midnight, perhaps at noon. The citizens stand in a wide circle, each at a door, each at a window, each upon a stair. They inhale together, they exhale together, and then, without signal, they leave, not because they are conquered, not because they are angry, but because silence has asked to be alone. The city did not die, turned inward. It allowed fog to inherit its streets, and lichen to inherit its thresholds, and moths to own its temples. It became a bowl for moonlight. It became a cup for the thin, clear rain that visits valleys after the long heat. It became a teacher for those few who, unable to sleep, walk with careful feet and ask no questions that require answers. The traveler moves from the chamber of lingering to a narrow lane. The walls lean, as if listening for something that might yet arrive. On a lintel, a symbol, a spiral enclosed within a square. The old emblem of home that does not hold, of holding that does not bind. He passes a fountain whose basin is a single slab of crystal, surface dulled by centuries of tender abrasion. When his fingers touch the rim, a distant tone lifts, not from the stone, but from the fog itself, as if mist can remember, as if vapor can sing. He comes to an amphitheater open to the sky. Its steps are shallow and many, as though built for people who move with the soft shuffle of nocturnal creatures. At the center, a bowl of black glass. He sees, in its surface, the pale coin of the veiled sun. He stands at the lip and breathes again. Across the bowl, across the air, something answers. A whisper layered upon whispers, more suggestion than sound. He does not try to parse it. To understand would be to narrow it. He lets it pass through him like wind through reeds. He becomes an instrument by being still. Some voices, he thinks, or perhaps the city thinks through him, only echo when we are ready to listen. Evening arrives without arriving. Light thins like tea, and the fog lowers, and the stone cools. The traveler sits upon the amphitheater's highest step and watches the valley go silver. A moth settles upon his sleeve, the color of ashes. He thinks of those who left. He wonders whether they ever spoke again in any other city, or if, once you have given your words to stone, the sky must carry you in silence thereafter. He thinks of names. He thinks of how many times a life must be said aloud to keep it alive. The night breathes in. Stars appear as if unburied. The city receives them with devotion. Roof lines that seemed broken become lines of script written in celestial ink. The amphitheater drinks starlight and gives back a faint glow, as a low flame might answer a high one. The traveler rises. He descends into a street that runs between two long walls. When he speaks a farewell, softly, more breath than voice, the farewell does not return. It slides forward, like a small boat on a river, and is gone. He feels no loss. The city is not a mirror for his voice, but a river for it. He lets the word go where words go when they are finished with him. At the stair where he began, he pauses. The rail under his hand is colder now. The hum within it has thinned to a thread. He thinks of taking a shard, a token, something crumbled and star-marked to carry back across the dunes. But his hand opens, empty. To keep would be to alter the echo. To alter the echo would be to unmake the city a little. He leaves with nothing. In leaving with nothing, he leaves with the city the way it wishes to be left. He climbs to the rim of fog. The valley in its bowl dims, then vanishes as the mist pours upward like slow smoke. Behind the veil, he can still sense the architectures. The chamber, the pedestal, the amphitheater, the lanes that lean. He understands now that they are not ruins. They are instruments. And instruments, even silent, are alive with the possibility of song. On the ridge, the wind returns. It carries a faint scent of damp stone and ancient dust. He looks once more into the whiteness and listens. The echoes do not come. This, too, is a form of blessing. Somewhere in the night, the great oceanic night that swallows valleys and crowns, the city sings to itself in tones beyond hearing, a music felt by moths, by stones, by the sleep that takes us carefully in both hands. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, or perhaps it wishes to be found only like this, not with shouts but with breath, not with torches but with patience, not with the hunger for answers but with the reverence for mystery. The traveler steps away from the ridge and begins his slow walk through the desert's starlit veil. Sand sighs underfoot. Above him, constellations write and erase themselves in an ancient hand. The night opens like a gate. His footsteps make no claim upon it. He carries the city not as a story to tell, but as a silence to share. And so the chapter closes, not with a door, not with a bell, but with a long, soft exhale. The echo of an echo, the veil settling, the sacred uncertainty of places that prefer to be dreamed rather than described. Beneath the silence, a promise remains. Some cities do not perish. They drift into the chambers of the heart and wait there, moonlit and veiled, until we are quiet enough to hear them answer our names. It begins with a faint light trembling in a sealed chamber. Not a flame, not a reflection, but a slow pulse upon paper. The parchment lies beneath a cracked glass dome in a scholar's forgotten study, its surface dark with age and soft as breath. Those who have seen it say it is blank by day. Yet when the moon climbs high and silver spills across the desk, lines begin to stir like roots waking beneath soil. They twist, they spread, they vanish. A coastline breathes into existence. A river curls. A city blinks. And then, with the next blink, all is gone again. It is said the map draws itself only when no one watches directly, that it senses the eyes and folds its secrets inward like a flower retreating from cold. The story begins with a seeker, not quite a scholar, not quite a wanderer, who arrives at a monastery where the walls are painted with the geometry of forgotten worlds. He has heard of the map through whispers traded in markets, through fragments of rumor left in books whose authors no longer exist. He is told it once belonged to an order who believed that the world was alive, that the mountains had veins, that the oceans dreamed, that the stars were not distant, but mirrored thoughts of the earth itself. He is led through long corridors where candlelight quivers upon stone. At the end waits a locked chamber. The monk who opens it speaks only one sentence before leaving him in solitude. Remember, it draws what remembers you. The air inside smells of ink and old rain. Dust drifts like drifting thought. Upon a table lies the map, parchment curled at its edges, glass dome misted with breath from no visible lungs. The seeker kneels, the boards beneath him groaning softly, as if they too are weary of waiting. He lights a small lamp and lowers it beside the dome. For a moment, nothing moves. Then a tremor, faint, almost tender. Lines begin to emerge like veins beneath pale skin. A river forms, flowing upward. Mountains bloom like thoughts breaking surface. And then he sees something stranger. The lines move, slowly, purposefully. The world reshapes itself, erasing what it had just revealed, sketching new boundaries, new paths. He realizes it is not a map of the earth. It is a map of time. Whispers tell us that it was first drawn by astronomer priests who charted not where lands stood, but where they would drift. They believed that memory was a landscape, that what we forget does not vanish, but simply relocates, waiting to be rediscovered. They inked with dust ground from fallen stars, binding the heavens and the soil into one instrument of remembrance. When they finished their work, the lines refused to stay still. The world itself had begun to change, and the map reflected the motion, not as prophecy, but as sympathy. The seeker watches the map ripple. Beneath its movements he hears a hum, low and steady, the vibration of something alive. He leans closer. The hum deepens, not from the paper, but from within him. His pulse begins to echo it. Each beat seems to alter a contour on the page. It is as though the map is listening to him, drawing what he dreams of, erasing what he fears. He recalls his homeland, long lost to drought. A river once wound through it like a song. As the thought passes through him, a river unfurls on the map. He blinks. He breathes. The river fades. He whispers his mother's name and mountains rise. He closes his eyes in awe and sorrow. When he opens them again, the mountains have turned to sea. It is then he understands. The map is not showing places. It is showing remembrance. Every line is a pulse of thought, every shore a breath of memory. It is the geography of the mind made visible, the shifting terrain of what humanity has loved and lost. He lifts the glass dome, though the monks had warned against it. The parchment breathes, lifting slightly, as though exhaling centuries of restraint. He runs a fingertip along one of the glowing lines. The ink is warm. It bleeds into his skin. The room bends softly. He is standing no longer in the monastery, but within the map itself, or what feels like its reflection. Around him stretches a landscape of vapor and starlight, mountains that fold like curtains, oceans that inhale and exhale with the rhythm of a sleeping creature. Roads of light curve between valleys of dusk. And everywhere, in the far distance, glimmer shapes of cities. Some familiar, some impossible, rising and falling with every breath he takes. He walks forward, his steps stirring faint ripples through the air. Each ripple becomes a path, and beneath each path, symbols shimmer. Words he cannot read but somehow knows. They are the names of every place that has ever existed, or perhaps every place that has been dreamt of but never built. At the horizon, a tower rises. It is made of mirrors that reflect nothing but the stars. Upon its surface he sees not his face, but the lives of countless others. Shepherds, queens, poets, wanderers, all tracing lines upon sand, snow, or parchment, all trying to remember where they began. The hum grows louder. He touches the tower. Its surface ripples like water, and from within comes a whisper. Every map leads back to the first line. He looks down. Beneath his feet, the lines of the map spiral inward, converging into a single symbol. An eye drawn not to see, but to remember. He kneels. Within the eye burns a small flame, colorless, steady. When he leans close, he sees that the flame is not consuming anything. It is simply existing, a light without hunger. The same light, perhaps, that once guided those who drew the first paths in the sand beside ancient rivers. He wants to ask questions. Who made this? Why does it move? What does it want of me? But the air is too quiet for speech. The questions dissolve before reaching his lips. Instead, he closes his eyes and listens. The hum softens. The flame pulses. And then he hears it. 1,000 voices, each whispering a name, each name the same word. Not in sound, but in feeling the word for home. It comes not from the tower, nor the map, but from beneath him, from the memory of soil, from the breath of earth. It is the voice of all that has ever been mapped, and all that will never be. The seeker understands that he cannot take this with him. No ink, no chart, no photograph could hold what this place is. It is not meant to be seen twice. He opens his eyes. The tower dissolves. The rivers retract. The stars fold inward like pages closing. The map unravels back into dust. He finds himself once more in the monastery chamber. The glass dome has shattered. The parchment lies still. The lines are gone. Only faint trails of silver remain, like veins cooling after death. His hands tremble. They are stained faintly with light. He leaves before dawn. Outside, the sky is pale, the color of unspoken words. The monks do not stop him. Perhaps they knew he would go. He walks for days across the barren plain, guided by nothing but the memory of that hum. Sometimes, in the reflection of a puddle, he sees shapes shift, coastlines that vanish as quickly as they appear. Sometimes, the clouds above form the outline of a river that no map records. He understands now why the monks said the map draws what remembers you. Because to know something truly is to carry it. And the more you carry, the less the world needs to be drawn at all. He stops at a ridge overlooking the desert. The wind moves through him, soft and hollow. He takes from his pocket a small scrap of parchment, a corner torn from the map before it vanished. It is blank, but when moonlight touches it, a faint glimmer runs across the surface. A single curve, like the beginning of a path. He places it in the sand. The wind buries it slowly. Perhaps it will find its way, he whispers. And as he turns to leave, he feels the faint vibration again. Deep beneath the ground, beneath the silence. As if the earth itself is sketching something new. No one knows where the map is now. Some say it was burned, and that the ash carried its memory into the clouds. Some say it still lies beneath the monastery, drawing itself endlessly, unseen. But there are travelers who claim that, on certain nights, when they lay out their own maps beneath the moon, the ink stirs ever so slightly, as if a hand unseen corrects their course, leading them not across distance, but toward some forgotten truth within. Perhaps every journey is the map redrawing itself. Perhaps every life is the parchment, trembling beneath the pen of memory. And perhaps what we call destination is only the moment when we realize we've been drawing our own return. So the map remains, hidden, alive, unfinished, drawing not the world, but the wonder that keeps it alive. And somewhere in the quiet folds of night, beneath the breath of stars, the lines move once more, soft, shimmering, as though the world has begun again to remember itself. Perhaps it was never meant to be read, but only to be dreamed. It is said that in the deepest heart of a forgotten jungle, where vines hang like slow-moving rivers and the air itself seems to breathe, there stands a temple that listens, not to prayers, nor chants, nor offerings of fire, but to the quiet music of the world. The fall of rain, the sigh of stone, the turning of leaves in the dark. The people who built it are gone. Their language has fallen into the soil, their gods erased by time. Yet the temple remains, half swallowed by roots, half awake beneath moss and shadow. A vast ear carved from black stone, tilted toward the sky as if straining to hear what the heavens no longer say aloud. Whispers tell us it was raised not for worship, but for listening. They believed that before words, before even thought, there was sound, the deep, endless hum that threads through everything, from mountain to marrow. And in that hum, they said, lived the first memory of the world. The story begins with a wanderer, a scholar of echoes, drawn by rumor and dream. For years he has traced maps that no longer exist, following rivers that have changed their beds, and the songs of birds that sing in patterns no one else notices. He travels with little more than a flute of bone and a satchel of notebooks filled with empty pages. One evening, as twilight melts into indigo, he comes upon a clearing lit by the soft gold of dying sunlight. Before him rises the temple, immense, ancient, patient. Vines creep along its flanks like veins. Trees press their roots into its foundation as if seeking its heartbeat. Every surface is engraved with spirals and circles, patterns that seem less carved than grown. At its center stands a doorway so tall it seems to reach the low clouds. He steps forward, each footfall swallowed by the hush that clings to the place. Even the jungle, alive with life, falls silent at its threshold. Inside, the air is cool, perfumed with stone and rain. Light filters through cracks in the ceiling, scattering into faint columns that shimmer with dust. The walls curve inward, smooth as shells, built to catch sound and carry it inward. He claps his hands once, softly. The echo returns, but not immediately. It lingers, as if deciding whether to come back at all. When it does, it is different, warmer, slower, like a voice thinking before it speaks. He understands then why they called it the temple that listened. The wanderer begins to explore. His footsteps trace circles, spirals, pathways that lead nowhere and everywhere. In the faint light, he sees carvings of open mouths, of ears shaped like petals, of eyes closed in concentration. He finds a hall where the floor is patterned with overlapping rings, each one vibrating faintly beneath his feet. When he kneels to listen, he hears, not the sound of his movement, but something older, deeper, the slow murmur of the earth's pulse. He takes out his flute and breathes one note into the air. The sound swells, not outward, but inward, caught by the curved walls and folded into 100 subtle tones. It becomes a chorus, soft and endless. He plays again, and the echoes weave around him, each note returning changed, elongated, bending as if the temple itself is answering in its own tongue. It feels less like an echo and more like a conversation, an exchange between sound and silence. He begins to understand what the builders must have known, that silence is not the absence of sound, but its guardian, the vessel in which it learns to endure. As the night deepens, the wanderer lights a small lamp. Its flame shivers as if reluctant to disturb the quiet. He sits cross-legged before the altar, a smooth, dark slab carved in the shape of a wave, and begins to read the symbols etched there. Some resemble constellations, others resemble breath. One carving draws his gaze, a spiral of concentric circles radiating outward from a single dot. Beneath it, faint words worn by time. To listen is to remember. To remember is to awaken the sky. He closes his eyes. The air around him vibrates. A drop of water falls from the ceiling, echoing like a bell. Then another, and another. Soon, the rhythm of water becomes steady, a celestial metronome. Between each drop, he hears faint murmurs, as if the temple itself is inhaling. He feels suddenly that he is being listened to, not by gods, but by something older, gentler, infinite. He wonders what it hears when it listens to him. His heartbeat, his breath, his doubts, perhaps all of them together form a single note, small but true. Whispers tell us that long ago, when the temple was young, its priests practiced a sacred ritual called the still hour. At dawn, they would gather in silence. Dozens of them seated around the altar, each one listening, not to the world, but to the space within themselves. They believed that every thought left a sound, and that by listening deeply enough, one could hear the echo of creation itself. It was said that during the still hour, the walls of the temple would hum in unison with the priests' hearts, and the sound would travel outward through soil, through trees, through air, until even the stars trembled in sympathy. But then came the storms. For 40 days the jungle drowned. The priests were scattered, their chants lost to wind and flood. When the water receded, the temple stood alone. Its walls held the final echoes of their voices, trapped, eternal. Since then, no one has heard the temple speak. Until now. The wanderer rises. His lamp flickers, nearly spent. He speaks softly into the air. Not words, but questions, shaped only in breath. Why were you made? What are you waiting to hear? The temple answers, not with sound, but with vibration. A low hum spreads through the floor, up through his bones, into his chest. It is like standing inside the throat of the world. The patterns on the wall shimmer. Dust falls in delicate spirals. He realizes the temple is not responding to his voice, but to his heartbeat, translating it into tone. Each pulse becomes a resonance, each breath a chord. He feels tears form without knowing why. He is hearing himself and yet not himself, a mirror of sound that reveals the soul rather than the body. He stays there until dawn, listening to the rhythm fade, until the hum is indistinguishable from the wind moving through the trees. When he steps outside, the first light spills across the canopy, soft and golden. The jungle exhales, as if it too has been holding its breath. He does not take notes. He does not draw diagrams or write symbols. He simply walks away, slow and reverent, carrying in his chest a silence that feels alive. Behind him, the temple remains, half shadow, half light. The vines shift against its walls, whispering softly as though retelling what they've just heard. Some nights, travelers claim that if you stand at the edge of that clearing and speak a word, any word, the jungle itself will repeat it, but not as an echo. The voice that returns sounds wiser, slower, filled with something older than understanding. Others say that if you stand in absolute stillness, you can hear the temple breathing, its pulse syncing with your own until you cannot tell where you end and the listening begins. Perhaps it waits for someone else to enter, someone who will listen not for meaning, but for memory. Or perhaps it listens still, not to people but to the world, to the slow music of rain, to the hush of moss growing, to the sigh of the wind carrying names it will never know. As the night folds back into silence, the jungle becomes one vast instrument. Leaves trembling with rhythm, roots humming softly underground, the air alive with the echo of 1,000 forgotten prayers. And deep within that ancient heart, the temple listens still, not for answers, not for worship, but for the simple, sacred act of hearing. For it is said that when the last sound of the world fades, when even the stars fall quiet, the temple will remember every note and hum softly until silence itself learns how to sing. Perhaps it was never meant to speak, only to listen, so that we might remember how. It begins in darkness, not the simple darkness of night, but the heavy, ancient kind that lives beneath mountains, the kind that remembers before memory began. Somewhere under the sands of the western desert, beyond the reach of wind and sun, there lies a chamber sealed for 5,000 years. The walls shimmer faintly with the sweat of stone. The air is dry, brittle, as if time itself has stopped breathing. This is the place the priests once called the hour between suns. An hour that, according to the old chronicles, does not exist. It is said that when the great pharaoh of the ninth horizon was entombed, his priests carved every second of his journey into the afterlife along the corridor that led to his burial chamber. Each inch of wall told a moment, the rising of the sun, the weighing of the heart, the meeting of gods beyond the veil. And yet, in the sequence of days and nights, there was a missing space, an hour deliberately left blank. No carvings, no hieroglyphs, only smooth, untouched stone, as if silence itself had been given form. The scrolls call it the forgotten hour, the breath between two eternities. The story begins with a young archaeologist who does not believe in myths. She has followed her mentor into the deep tombs of the Valley of Kings, where air becomes still as glass. She carries a lamp fueled by desert oil, its flame small and unsteady. When they reach the unmarked corridor, the one no blueprint recorded, her mentor hesitates. He murmurs a warning. There are hours that do not wish to be remembered, but curiosity, that old companion of ruin, presses her forward. She steps inside. The light flickers against the bare wall and finds nothing. No color, no script, no story, only the smooth sheen of stone, cool beneath her fingers. And then the faintest vibration, like a heartbeat, deep within the wall itself. Whispers tell us that this blank passage was once the pharaoh's final test, a moment suspended outside the river of time. The priests believed that the gods had given man one uncounted hour, an hour invisible to sun and moon alike, when life and death could meet in silence. It was during this hour, they said, that a soul decided whether to go forward or return. No records name what the pharaoh saw in that darkness, only that he never spoke again when he emerged. His voice, the legends say, was offered to the stars in exchange for knowledge too vast for mortal sound. The archaeologist traces the walls again, her hand trembling. The air feels alive, filled not with dust, but with waiting. Her lamp begins to dim, though its oil is full. The flame stretches, bends sideways, as though drawn by an unseen breath. Then faintly she hears it, a whisper, not words, something older than words, a sound like sand shifting in memory. She steps closer. Her shadow trembles upon the wall, and for the briefest moment, she sees it. Faint outlines etched beneath the surface, hidden carvings, invisible by daylight, emerging only under the flicker of flame. Figures walking backward, stars drawn upside down. A sun split in two. She lifts the lamp higher. The carvings move. The priests believed that during the forgotten hour, the world reversed. Rivers flowed back to their sources. The sun fell upward through the sky, and the dead, for one heartbeat, remembered breath. It was the moment the gods used to turn time itself, like a great wheel resetting its balance. To look upon it, they said, was to risk never returning to the ordinary rhythm of hours. The archaeologist feels her pulse stutter. The corridor seems to lengthen around her, its end receding into blackness. Her mentor calls her name, but the sound comes from far away, stretched thin, as if traveling through centuries rather than air. The flame in her hand shivers, then steadies, and in its glow, she sees a door appear at the corridor's end. A door that was not there before. A door without a handle, without hinges. Upon its surface, a single symbol, an eye closed in sleep. She raises her hand and touches it. The door breathes, When she wakes, she is standing in a vast hall bathed in golden dust. The air feels different, lighter, gentler, as though the world has just begun again. Around her stand statues of gods she has never seen. Not of stone, but of light, translucent and slow-moving, like reflections on water. In the center of the hall lies a sarcophagus carved from obsidian. Its lid bears no name. She approaches it, drawn as if by gravity itself. At the sarcophagus's edge rests a small hourglass, its sand frozen mid-fall. Each grain suspended between motion and stillness, between before and after. She touches the glass. The sand stirs, and from the shadows of the chamber, a voice speaks. Not in sound, but in vibration, a resonance felt in her bones. There is always 1 hour the gods cannot see. The words echo inside her, blooming like heat. It is the hour when the world forgets itself, when every life remembers its beginning. The voice fades. The sand resumes its fall. She looks up and the statues are gone. The hall darkens. The air thickens. In the corner of her vision, she sees movement. Figures painted on the walls coming alive, their colors bright as flame. Priests bowing, stars spinning. The pharaoh himself, seated, silent, watching a sun split in two. His hands are open, palms upward, as though weighing light. The air hums, the same vibration she felt before, stronger now, pressing against her chest. Her own heartbeat slows until it matches that rhythm. For a moment, she understands. Time is not a river. It is a breath. It expands, contracts, and the forgotten hour is the moment between, the pause where eternity inhales. She closes her eyes. In that silence, she hears everything. The birth of wind, the echo of stone, the sigh of stars growing cold. And then, softly, a whisper that sounds like her own voice. Remember. When she opens her eyes, she is back in the corridor. The lamp burns steady. Her mentor stands beside her, his face pale, his voice shaking. "You were gone," he whispers. "For an hour." She looks down at her watch. The hands have stopped at midnight and will not move again. They leave the tomb before dawn. The desert greets them with a silence that feels older than sunrise. She carries nothing out with her. No artifact, no inscription, only the memory of that stillness, the hush between heartbeats. Years later, she will try to describe it in her journals. The corridor without markings, the hum of the wall, the door with the sleeping eye. But no sentence can hold it. Each time she writes, the ink fades. Each time she speaks, her voice softens into silence. Perhaps the forgotten hour does not belong to speech. Perhaps it belongs only to the space between words, the sacred pause that reminds the universe it is still breathing. They say that when the pharaoh's tomb was finally sealed, the priests waited in darkness, counting the minutes until the hour that did not exist had passed. None spoke, none moved, and when the hour was over, or when they felt it was, they said a single phrase, "May the sun forget us kindly." Then they left the chamber and time resumed. But somewhere, beneath the sand, that blank wall remains, untouched, humming softly, marking the space where the world once stopped to listen. And it is said that on certain nights, when the desert wind is perfectly still, you can hear the faint sound of sand falling upward, as if the earth itself is remembering that missing hour. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was placed there, like a breath between words, to remind us that even time must rest. And when the last grain of sand falls, and the final light fades behind the dunes, the hour will return once more, silent, sacred, waiting to be forgotten again. It is said that high in the mountains where air turns to crystal and silence becomes a kind of prayer, there stood a monastery whose walls were painted with the stars. Not as they are seen now, scattered and trembling in the night's black sea, but as they once were, long before man learned to count them. The monks who lived there were not astronomers. They had no telescopes, no instruments, no parchment charts. Yet when the first explorers reached the ruins centuries later, they found on the ceilings constellations unknown to their age, patterns of galaxies mapped with exquisite precision, painted with pigments that had not faded, though the walls had crumbled. No one knows how they saw what they saw. Some say they dreamed it. Others whisper that they remembered. The monastery was called the House of Breath. Perched upon a cliff so high it touched the morning clouds, it was a place where the horizon vanished, and the world seemed to float between heaven and earth. The monks wore robes the color of smoke and spoke little. They believed that silence was the purest pigment, that only by stillness could one hear the true rhythm of the universe. Each dawn, before the sun reached their threshold, they would climb to the rooftop and sit in meditation, facing the slow, vast turning of the sky. They did not pray to the stars. They listened to them. They said the heavens hum softly, that every star vibrates with its own note, and that together they form the great music of existence. A melody the soul can hear when the body forgets itself. When night returned, they would descend into the chapel, light their lamps and paint, not from imagination, not from memory, but from the echoes of that celestial song. It is said that the leader of the order, a monk known only as the Quiet One, had once been a musician before renouncing the world. He had heard, in the notes of his flute, the faint trace of something infinite. When he laid down his instrument, he turned his ear toward the sky. It is from his visions, they say, that the first celestial fresco was born. The ceilings of the chapel shimmered with endless detail, clusters of stars like woven silk, nebulas blooming like flowers at the edge of creation, galaxies spiraling as if caught in divine breath. At the center of it all, above the altar, was painted a single figure, a monk, robed in gray, sitting cross-legged upon nothing, eyes closed, palms open, his head haloed not by light, but by darkness filled with stars. The fresco was called the Listener. Whispers tell us that the monks mixed their pigments with stardust. Of course, such a thing cannot be proven, but legend says they gathered it from a meteor that fell one winter night into the ravine below the monastery. When they ground its fragments into powder and mixed them with oil and ash, the paint shimmered with unearthly brilliance, not merely reflecting light, but emitting it. Under lamplight, the fresco glowed faintly, as if alive, and when the wind howled outside, the monks claimed to hear the stars answer from the ceiling, their hum deepening, their voices threading through the corridors like slow water. One night, long after the Quiet One had died, a storm gathered around the mountain. The wind screamed, lightning struck the cliffs, breaking great stones loose from their faces. The monks retreated into the chapel for safety, lighting their lamps and closing the great wooden doors. As thunder rolled, the stars above them began to shift. What had always been still, what had been painted, began to move. Galaxies swirled. Constellations trembled. The stars, it is said, began to rearrange themselves. The monks fell to their knees, believing the heavens had come to speak. Some wept. Others sang softly, their chants blending with the rising hum of the walls. Then, above the altar, the figure of the listener opened its painted eyes. What they saw, no words record. Only this: when the storm passed and morning returned, the doors were found wide open. Inside, every lamp had burned down to smoke. The fresco remained, but changed. The painted monk was gone. In his place, a dark circle shimmered, a void speckled with faint dust, as if the stars themselves had inhaled and held their breath. The monks who survived left the mountain. Some went to distant monasteries and never spoke again. Some wandered into the valleys below, claiming the sky had whispered to them in a language without sound. And in the centuries that followed, travelers who climbed to those heights reported strange things. At dusk, when mist rolled through the ravine, faint music could be heard, tones low and clear, like the slow turning of planets. At night, the ruined ceiling still glowed faintly, as though painted with light that had not yet learned to fade. The story might have ended there, another myth buried beneath snow and silence, if not for the traveler who came centuries later. He was a scholar of stars, a man who carried telescopes instead of prayers. He reached the ruins at dusk, the mountain air sharp with frost. The chapel roof had fallen, and half the frescoes lay exposed to the sky. He set his lamp upon the altar and studied what remained. The pigments still gleamed, though no light touched them. He noticed, with a scholar's eye, that many constellations were not those known to his time. Yet when he cross-referenced them later, they matched discoveries made only in recent years, galaxies seen through modern telescopes. He felt a tremor of awe. How could monks centuries ago have painted stars that would not be known until now? He raised his telescope to the heavens. Through its lens, he saw patterns that mirrored the fresco precisely, not as the sky looked that night, but as it might have looked thousands of years in the past. The realization struck him softly, like snow falling upon stone. The monks had not been painting the stars as they saw them. They had been painting the stars as they remembered them. He remained through the night, recording each detail, each shimmer of dust. Around midnight, the wind rose, the lamp flickered, the fresco's light deepened, and for a moment, the chapel seemed to breathe. He thought he heard something, faint, melodic, like a distant choir. Then, from somewhere deep within the mountain, came a resonance. A sound not of wind, but of vastness, vibrating through every stone. He realized he was hearing the same hum the monks had heard, the sound of the universe moving. Not music made for ears, but for silence. He sat and listened, and for a long while there was no difference between the stars above, the stars on the wall, and the stars behind his eyes. When dawn came, he left quietly. He did not take sketches, nor fragments of paint, nor rubbings of inscription. He carried instead a single sentence written upon a scrap of paper. The heavens do not show us what is new. They remind us of what we have always known. Years later, those who read his journals noted something strange. In his final entry, he described looking up from his study one night and seeing the same star patterns that adorned the fresco, appearing briefly, impossibly, above his city. Then the stars returned to their ordinary positions. And he wrote simply, "They were not looking down, they were looking back." Some say that on certain nights, when the world is perfectly still, the old monastery glows faintly, not from fire, but from memory. Its walls, though broken, shimmer with unseen color. The air hums softly, as if reciting the last notes of an unfinished song. And if you stand there long enough under the great turning of the cosmos, you might feel it too. The rhythm beneath silence, the vast music of everything breathing as one. Perhaps the monks never painted the stars at all. Perhaps they painted listening, a stillness so deep that even the sky felt compelled to answer. And somewhere, high above the sleeping world, where light meets shadow and the air becomes thin enough for truth, the heavens still hum softly, carrying the echoes of those who once painted them awake. Perhaps it was never meant to be seen, but to remind us that we, too, are written across the sky. It stands alone in the middle of a wind-carved plain, a doorway without walls, without roof, without any trace of what it once belonged to. The locals call it the gate of the absent house. To some, it is a relic of an unfinished temple. To others, it is nothing but a ruin the wind forgot to bury. But at night, when the moon hangs low and pale as breath, the doorway glows faintly, a halo of light tracing its frame. And those who pass through it never see the world quite the same again. The story begins with a pilgrim who has long forgotten what he was seeking. He walks with dust in his sandals and years in his eyes, following a road that has not existed for centuries. He comes upon the plain at twilight. The air hums with the low, trembling song of the desert, the same sound that fills the silence between heartbeats. In the distance, he sees the shape, two upright pillars of stone, capped by a lintel of white granite streaked with faint gold. There is no trace of foundation, no rubble to suggest collapse. The door simply is, as if the world around it had been erased, leaving only the threshold behind. He feels a strange pull, not curiosity exactly, but recognition, as if the doorway has been waiting for him. When he draws near, he notices that the stone is smooth to the touch, yet faintly warm, as though it remembers sunlight that has never fallen upon it. Along its sides are carvings, not letters, not language, but patterns like flowing water or strands of wind. In the center of the lintel, a symbol is carved, a circle divided into two halves, one of light, one of shadow. He asks aloud, half to himself, "What do you open?" The wind answers by falling silent. Whispers tell us that long ago, a monastery stood here, not of devotion but of passage. Its monks were said to study thresholds, doorways, arches, bridges, all places where one state became another. They believed that such places held the purest form of truth, for in the instant of crossing, a soul belongs to neither side, not past, not future, not light, not dark, but to the in-between. They built this door to honor that sacred interval. No walls, no gates, no hinges. Only the frame, the idea of passage made visible. When their monastery vanished, whether by sand, by time, or by intention, the doorway remained. And some say that if one stands before it in perfect stillness, the air inside the frame begins to shimmer like water. That what lies beyond it is not another place, but another moment. The pilgrim circles the structure. From every angle it is the same. An open threshold, framing the endless plain. He feels the urge to step through, though there is nowhere to go. He takes a breath. The horizon hums. He crosses. The world does not change. And yet, everything changes. The air feels denser, slower. The wind seems to pause before touching him, as if uncertain. Colors shift slightly, deeper, softer. The sky now the hue of old silk, the sand glimmering like pale gold dust. Even his own heartbeat seems distant, as though belonging to someone else. He turns around. The doorway stands as before, but the light within it trembles. A soft pulse, like breath. He walks a few paces, and every step sounds heavier, as if the earth beneath him listens. He looks at his hands and finds them glowing faintly at the fingertips, not with heat, but with memory. He senses that this place, this side of the threshold, is woven from what has been left behind. He sees faint shapes rising in the air, outlines of walls long gone, doorways opening into nothing, the ghostly geometry of what once stood here. And for a moment he feels he is walking through memory itself. He whispers a prayer, though he does not know to whom. Let me see what you once were. The air folds, and he sees not with eyes, but with the space behind them. Figures moving through corridors of light, hands tracing invisible lines. Monks in robes of ash, walking in circles around the doorway, their faces calm, their mouths unspoken. Each time they pass through, they vanish for a breath and return changed. A little older, a little softer, as if they have walked through the memory of their own lives. Then the vision fades. The plain returns, vast and silent. He sits before the door as night rises, watching the moon pour its pale fire through the frame, and he begins to understand. Perhaps the door does not lead elsewhere at all. Perhaps it reveals what we have forgotten to see, that every step, every breath, every heartbeat is its own crossing. He remembers fragments of his life, a face he loved, long gone, a promise whispered beneath a rain that has long since dried, the sound of laughter echoing in a corridor he cannot place. Each memory drifts through him like wind through a doorway. He realizes they have never truly left. They were only waiting beyond the threshold of awareness. He closes his eyes. Whispers tell us that the monks of the vanished monastery taught a final teaching, the doctrine of return. They believed that when a person dies, their soul passes not into heaven or shadow, but back through the same door by which they first entered life. And that if one could find this door before death, they could step through willingly, neither leaving nor arriving, simply becoming still. Some say the pilgrim does exactly that he rises at dawn, stands before the frame, and breathes once more the sacred air of both worlds. That he steps forward slowly, and in the space between one heartbeat and the next, he disappears, not vanished, not erased, simply crossed. And though no one witnesses it, the desert feels the shift. The wind sighs differently that day, as if remembering an old song. And the sun lingers a moment longer before climbing higher. A small pause, a breath between days. Years later, Travelers who cross the plain tell of strange sensations. Some say that when they pass through the doorway, their reflection lags behind by a single heartbeat. Others claim to hear whispers in a language they once knew as children. One woman said she saw herself on the other side, smiling softly, as if welcoming her home. There are those who refuse to go near it, fearing it is a gate to another realm. And there are those who return again and again, drawn not by faith or fear, but by the quiet pull of recognition, the feeling that in its silent frame, something of themselves waits patiently to be remembered. The doorway still stands. Wind moves through it, carrying the scent of distance. Stars rise behind it, framed like jewels in its hollow arch. And sometimes, in the blue hours before dawn, it glows faintly, not from moonlight, but from within. Perhaps it listens. Perhaps it dreams. Perhaps every door we've ever opened, every parting, every beginning, is but an echo of that first threshold. The one that stands in the middle of time, framed by nothing but the infinite. And as the wind hums low, and the desert folds itself back into silence, the door waits, not for travelers, not for prayers, but for the moment when the world remembers that it, too, is always standing on the edge of something unseen. Perhaps it was never meant to lead anywhere. Perhaps it was meant only to remind us that we are always in passage, forever stepping through light, through shadow, through the silent door between breaths. It stands at the edge of a forgotten coast, an old clock tower, weathered by salt and wind, its face pale and blind from centuries of sun. The town that once surrounded it is gone, claimed by the restless sea. Only the tower remains, leaning slightly toward the horizon, as if listening to the waves whisper secrets in a language it once knew. But it is not the ruin that draws the few wanderers who find it. It is the clock itself. For though the hands still move, they move backward. The story begins with a man of the sea, an old watchmaker named Adrian who lives in a nearby village, where the ocean fog rolls through the streets like sleep. His father was a sailor, his mother a keeper of time. She wound clocks in the town hall long ago, before the sea swallowed the harbor. Adrian spends his days repairing the broken clocks of strangers, patient, careful, always listening to the rhythm between ticks. He believes every clock has a voice, a soul hidden within its gears. And every so often, when he cannot sleep, he dreams of the great tower on the horizon. Its empty windows, its silent chime, its clock that turns against the sun. One autumn morning, he decides to go. The path to the tower is long and quiet. The air smells of iron and tide. Seaweed clings to the rocks like forgotten hair. He walks through mist so thick it seems alive, shifting with every breath. When he reaches the cliffs, the tower rises before him, a silhouette of stone and shadow, its edges softened by moss and time. He finds the door half buried in sand. It opens without protest, as though the tower has been waiting. Inside, the air is cool and still, filled with the faint sound of ticking, soft, irregular, like a heart remembering how to beat. He climbs the spiral stairs. Each step groans beneath his weight, each turn narrower than the last. Dust dances in the thin shafts of light that pierce the cracks in the wall. As he ascends, the ticking grows louder, steadier, until it becomes a slow, hypnotic rhythm that seems to draw him upward. At last, he reaches the top. The great clock looms before him, its brass gears tarnished, its pendulum swinging not forward, but back. The hands turn in reverse, smooth and patient, as if the clock has no intention of being hurried by the world's direction. Adrian watches, mesmerized. He listens, and beneath the ticking, he hears something else. A faint hum, like the echo of waves far below, but slower, deeper, almost like breathing. He touches the clock's casing. It vibrates faintly beneath his fingers. He kneels, opens the small panel at its base, and finds something impossible. The mechanism is not powered by weights or springs, but by water. A thin stream flows within the gears, seawater, glimmering faintly with light, cycling endlessly through the machine. It drips upward, not down, returning to its source against gravity. He whispers, awestruck, "You're moving against time," and for a moment he thinks he hears an answer. A low voice inside the rhythm, or perhaps time is moving against you. Whispers tell us that the tower was built by a queen who feared forgetting. Her husband was a sailor lost to the sea, and she could not bear the march of time that carried her farther from him. So she summoned the clockmaker priests of the north, those who believed time was not a line, but a tide, and asked them to build a clock that could return her to the moment before loss. They warned her that time resists being turned, that every backward step must be paid for in memory. But she agreed, and they obeyed. They constructed a clock that turned against the sun, powered by the sea itself, wound by the pull of the moon. It would count the hours backward, undoing moments, peeling away the past layer by layer until all that remained was silence. They say that when the final hour struck, the queen vanished, and the sea rose to claim her kingdom. Adrian sits in the shadow of the gears, his hands trembling. He feels the pull of the clock, not in his body, but in his mind. Memories begin to flicker backward, faint and tender. He sees his mother winding clocks in the quiet hall, her hands steady, her face lit by candlelight. He sees his father stepping onto the ship, smiling, waving, promising to return. He sees the day the sea came without warning, black waves rising, swallowing harbor and home. He feels the ache of loss unwind, like a knot loosening in his chest. He breathes easier, but the ease feels wrong, too light, too hollow. With each backward swing of the pendulum, something precious unravels. He looks down and realizes he cannot remember his father's voice, only the rhythm of his steps. He stands, shaken, and looks at the great clock's face. The hands are spinning faster now, backward, deeper into what was. He reaches for the gears, trying to stop them, but his fingers pass through the air, as if touching smoke. The room brightens, the air feels young, and outside, the sea begins to recede. He sees it through the tower's broken window, the tide pulling away, revealing streets, houses, boats, the world as it once was. Children laughing by the shore, smoke rising from chimneys, the Queen's city alive again. Adrian stumbles back, his heart pounding. The illusion, if illusion it is, feels real enough to breathe. He hears bells. He smells bread baking. He sees faces he cannot name but feels he has loved. He understands what the clock is doing. It is not reversing the sea. It is reversing memory, restoring what the world has lost, but only for those who stand within its reach. He looks again at the pendulum, swinging gently backward. Each motion erases a little more of what is, and he realizes that if he lets it continue, he too will vanish, not into death, but into the hour before he was born. He steps closer. The hum grows deeper. The air vibrates with the sound of years unspooling. He places his hand upon the pendulum. "Enough," he whispers. The clock resists, a soft, immense force pressing against his palm. The wind howls through the tower's open windows, pulling the scent of salt and thyme. He closes his eyes, remembering the words his mother once said. "Every clock is a heartbeat, Adrian, and every heartbeat is a choice to go on." With a final breath, he pushes. The pendulum slows, then stops. For a moment, all sound ceases. The sea, the wind, the world itself. A silence so deep it feels sacred. Then, slowly, the clock begins again. Forward this time. The tide returns. The city fades. Only the present remains, quiet and complete. Adrian kneels, exhausted. The mechanism still hums, but softly now. A heartbeat no longer trying to undo itself. He leaves the tower before dawn. When he looks back, its face catches the first light of morning. The hands move forward, smooth and steady. He smiles, though tears fill his eyes. For the first time in years, he does not wish to turn anything back. They say that after that day, the clock tower fell silent for good. But some nights, when the tide is high and the wind calm, the villagers hear a faint ticking across the water. Slow, even patient. And those who listen closely swear it counts not seconds, but heartbeats. Perhaps the clock never truly turned backward. Perhaps it only reminded those who heard it that time does not take from us, keeps what we are not ready to remember. And when we learn to listen, really listen, we hear that the heart has always known the direction. Forward, always forward, through the silence between waves, through the soft ticking of the unseen. Perhaps it was never built to undo the past, but to remind us that even what is gone still moves with us, tick by tender tick, into eternity. It is said that beneath the ruins of a forgotten palace, far beyond the reach of roads, in a valley where the air hangs heavy with mist, there grows a garden no map remembers. Its gates are hidden behind fallen marble, its paths paved not with stone, but with silence. The villagers nearby speak of it only in murmurs, calling it the garden that forgets you. For those who enter, it is said, do not return the same. Some never return at all, and those who do can no longer remember what they found inside. The story begins with a woman named Lyra, a wanderer, though she does not know from where. She wakes one morning in the forest, her memory stripped to fragments. The scent of rain, a voice saying her name, a vision of a silver gate opening into fog. She follows the sound of water until she reaches a clearing. Before her stands a wall of marble, cracked and veined with moss, the remains of what might once have been a temple or a home. And at its center, half swallowed by vines, she sees the gate from her dreams. Tall, wrought of black iron, its bars twined with ivy and ash. A breeze sighs through, carrying a faint fragrance. Jasmine, rain, and something older, something she almost remembers. Without knowing why, she steps forward. The vines part for her hand. The gate opens without a sound. Inside is no ruin at all. The air glows softly, as if filled with unseen stars. Trees rise tall and translucent, their trunks smooth as glass. Beneath them bloom flowers the color of moonlight, petals pale, edges faintly luminous. The air hums with a sound too low to be music, too constant to be silence. Lyra walks slowly, her steps muffled by moss that feels warm beneath her feet. Each path curves into another, forming a labyrinth that does not wish to be solved. The air smells of memory, soft, aching, ungraspable. She comes upon a pool so still it reflects not the sky, but dreams. The water shows not her face, but moments she has forgotten. A city by the sea, a window with lanterns, a man smiling as he turned to speak. The reflection ripples. The images vanish. She kneels by the pool and whispers, "Who am I?" The water trembles once, then stills. Whispers tell us that long ago, this garden was planted by a queen who mourned not a lover, nor a kingdom, but her own memory. She had lived too many lives, worn too many names. She longed for one moment of peace, a place where the past could dissolve, where the burden of knowing could fall away like leaves at dusk. So she summoned the gardeners of the moon, monks who spoke in silence and grew nothing that could die. They brought with them soil from forgotten graves and seeds gathered from dreams. When they were done, a garden bloomed where nothing else had ever lived. It did not grow toward the sun. It grew toward forgetting.
Lyra wanders deeper.
The garden seems to breathe with her, expanding and contracting in rhythm with her heartbeat. She passes trees whose leaves whisper in her mother's voice, though she cannot remember her mother's face. She sees statues carved from pale stone, each half buried in the earth, as if returning to sleep. At the foot of one, she finds a book without words, its pages blank, its cover soft as skin. When she opens it, faint letters bloom across the surface, then fade before she can read them. She feels tears on her cheeks, though she does not know why. At the garden's heart stands a pavilion draped in mist. Its columns are carved with vines that seem to grow as she watches. Beneath it, on a marble bench, lies a single mask, simple, unadorned, shaped in the image of calm. She lifts it, feels warm, alive, and when she holds it to her face, the air shifts, the hum deepens, the garden stirs, the world turns inward. Suddenly, she remembers everything, not as story, but as feeling. She remembers the grief of losing what she loved, the endless search for peace, the dream of a gate that would lead her back to silence. She remembers building this garden, her hands planting seeds beneath moonlight, her prayers shaping the soil. She was the queen, and she had made this place for herself, a sanctuary of forgetting, a refuge from the weight of being known. She sinks to her knees. The mask slides from her hands, resting beside her like a sleeping face. Above her, the leaves whisper, not in words, but in the rhythm of her own breath. She understands now why those who enter do not return. It is not because the garden consumes them. It is because it returns them to what they were before they were someone. She looks at her reflection again. This time there is no image, only light. Whispers tell us that the veiled garden is not a place in the world, but a place the world dreams of, the moment before awakening, the space between memory and oblivion. Some who have claimed to visit it say that when they left, the sky looked softer, and the names of things no longer felt as sharp. They forgot the path, but not the peace. Others say the garden appears only to those who have carried too much sorrow, those who need to remember what it feels like to let go. And it never looks the same twice. For some, it is a forest. For others, a field of stars. For a few, it is nothing but light. When Lyra, or the woman who was once queen, rises from the pavilion, she no longer feels the need to ask questions. The air is cool and kind. The world around her hums softly, like a lullaby sung by the earth itself. She walks back to the gate. But when she reaches it, she finds there is no gate at all, only mist opening into morning. She steps forward, and the garden breathes a final time, folding itself into silence. Days later, shepherds find her wandering the foothills beyond the forest. She remembers her name, but not the place she came from. She lives quietly thereafter, tending small gardens, humming to the plants as they grow. At night, she dreams of a vast stillness filled with light, and wakes with tears on her face. When she dies many years later, flowers bloom across her grave, white, luminescent, untouched by decay. And those who pass by say that if you stand there at dusk, the air smells faintly of jasmine and rain, and for a brief moment you feel the weight of memory lift, as though the earth itself has taken it from you to keep it safe. Perhaps the veiled garden was never meant to be found. Perhaps it is not a place, but a mercy, a reminder that forgetting is not the opposite of remembering, but the resting of it. And maybe, when the soul grows tired of carrying its stories, the garden blooms again, unseen, waiting, patient, its petals open beneath the veil of the moon, ready to receive one more weary traveler who has wandered too far from peace. Perhaps it was never meant to erase what we know, but only to teach us how to let it go gently, like petals, falling into the dark, soft as the breath of rain. In the shadow of a mountain long forgotten by maps, there lies a cavern so deep that no echo ever returns from it. The villagers who live in the valley below call it the mouth of night. They say that when the wind enters the cavern, it does not emerge again, as though the mountain itself is swallowing the world's breath. Long ago, miners found something within that blackness. Not gold, not iron, but a single block of obsidian so large it seemed to hold its own horizon. They struck it with their tools and it sang. A sound unlike any other. Low, endless, neither note nor noise. A vibration that touched not the ears, but the bones. It was said that whoever heard the stone's voice could never hear silence again. The story begins with a young scholar named Aaron, a collector of vanishing sounds. He has recorded the last cry of extinct birds, the rustle of ancient reeds, the final bells of abandoned churches. But what he longs for most is the sound no one remembers, the original tone from which all music was born. When he learns of the obsidian stone, he travels to the valley alone. The villagers warn him. The mountain keeps what it hears. But he only smiles and replies, "Perhaps it will keep me too." He climbs through mist and cold, his lantern swinging like a lonely planet in the dark. The air grows still as he nears the cavern. He lights incense and leaves a coin at the entrance, as the old miners once did. Then he steps inside. The passage narrows, the walls glistening like wet glass. Each step deepens the quiet until it becomes a weight pressing on his chest. He breathes shallowly, afraid even of his own sound. At last, the tunnel widens into a vast chamber. His lantern's flame wavers, revealing a floor smooth as frozen water. And there, in the center, stands the obsidian. A single monolith, taller than 3 men, its surface rippling with reflections of things unseen.
Era na pruakas.
His footsteps vanish before reaching his ears. He touches the stone. It is cold, impossibly so, and yet, beneath his hand, it thrums. He lifts a small mallet from his pack and strikes it once. Lightly. The tone rises. A sound that is not sound. A resonance that fills the lungs, the eyes, the very air between thoughts. It seems to last forever, folding in on itself like waves upon a shore that never ends. He feels tears on his face. He cannot tell if they are his own. Whispers tell us that when the miners first found the stone, they built a temple around it, believing it to be the voice of the earth itself. They called it the breath of the deep. They carved flutes of bone, drums of hollow rock, harps of silver thread, trying to join their song to the stones. But every sound they made vanished into it, devoured by its resonance. In time, the music became too heavy to bear. The temple crumbled, and the people fled, leaving only silence, or what they thought was silence. For the mountain never stopped singing. Aaron sets his recorder on the ground, hoping to capture what no one has ever heard twice. He strikes the stone again, harder. The sound swells, a storm of tone, vibrating through rock and blood. The walls shimmer, dust rises like smoke. The light in his lantern elongates, bends, becomes a column stretching upward into the unseen. He feels himself dissolving, not dying, but being remembered. Every heartbeat he has ever lived echoes back at once. Childhood laughter, footsteps in snow, the sigh of someone he once loved. All of it folded into one vast hum. And then, beneath that, another voice, deeper, older, patient. It speaks without words. You are not listening to me. You are listening to yourself through me. The mallet slips from his fingers. He kneels, dizzy with awe. The floor beneath him vibrates softly, a rhythm that matches his pulse. He realizes now why the miners fled. The sound is not merely heard, it knows you. It listens back. He whispers, "What are you?" The tone rises again, slow and wide, filling every hollow in his bones. He feels the answer more than he understands it. I am the echo before the first sound. I am what remains when all music ends. He closes his eyes. The sound envelopes him, tender as a heartbeat, vast as night. He forgets the difference between his breath and the stone's vibration. He forgets the name of silence. When the villagers find his lantern days later, it still burns. But there is no trace of Aaron. Only his recorder remains, covered in a fine layer of black dust. They take it back to the village, hesitant, as though carrying a heartbeat that has lost its body. When they play it, no sound emerges, only the faint hum of air before thunder. They bury the device near the churchyard, but sometimes, when the wind moves through the valley just so, a tone rises from the ground, low, continuous, patient. The villagers say it is Aaron, still listening. Scholars who have studied the site since then agree on one thing: the obsidian monolith is alive. Not as we are, but as mountains are, aware in the way stone remembers pressure, or rivers remember the shape of the land. One scientist reported that the rock vibrates at the same frequency as the human heart at rest. Another, more poetically, wrote, "The mountain is breathing through us, yet no instrument has ever captured the sound again. Recordings return empty, microphones break. Only those who stand before it, alone, in silence, can hear its song." It is said that the stone still sings each night when the stars are hidden, a sound too slow for our kind of hearing. Some who sleep nearby claim to dream of voices humming through dark water. Others wake with their hearts beating in perfect rhythm with the earth beneath them. And though none dare strike it now, the mountain hums on, the song of beginnings and endings, of breath before word, of silence after music. Perhaps the stone is not a relic of creation, but a memory of it, a fragment of the first vibration that stirred the universe awake. Perhaps it waits not to be understood, but simply to be heard with reverence. When the wind moves through the valley, carrying the scent of stone and rain, it is said that if you stand perfectly still, you can hear a faint resonance rising through your feet. Not loud, not even clear, a pulse beneath thought, reminding you that everything living and unliving beats together in time. The villagers bow their heads when it comes. They do not speak. They only listen. And somewhere beneath them, the obsidian stone continues its eternal song, not for glory, not for witness, but to keep the silence from falling apart. A single note, endless, invisible, the sound of the world remembering that it is still alive. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, but only to remind us that even silence has a voice. A slow, endless song, humming through the heart of stone and through us all. They say that beneath the restless skin of the ocean, past the reach of sun and sail, lies a city that still dreams of the sky. Its towers are said to be built of coral and bronze, its streets paved with pearl dust, its windows shimmering like the eyes of sleeping gods. The fishermen call it the kingdom beneath the waves, though none alive have seen it, only the reflection of its spires trembling on the surface of the sea when the water grows still enough to remember. Every generation, someone hears the call, a low note carried on the tide, soft as breath, deep as longing, and some follow it never to return. The sea, they say, is not cruel. It simply reclaims what once belonged to it. Our story begins with a sailor named Ionas. He has spent his life tracing the same routes between islands that no longer appear on maps. His ship creaks with age, his hands with salt, and his eyes with distance. He sails alone now, following no compass but the pull of the horizon. Some nights he dreams of a city made of light, rising from the deep like a memory breaking the surface. He wakes with the sound of bells in his ears, not from any harbor, but from beneath the waves. Bells that sound as if they are ringing backward, returning time to the moment before the sea forgot its shores. He begins to follow them, The ocean grows calmer the further he sails, until the water mirrors the sky with uncanny stillness. The horizon dissolves. Above and below become one. The stars seem to float beneath the ship. The air thickens, heavy with the scent of copper and rain. Then, in the blue darkness below, he sees it, faint at first, like a constellation turned upside down. Towers rising, bridges curving, a city that breathes light through water. He leans over the railing, his lantern swaying above the abyss. The reflection shivers, then steadies, and he realizes with a tremor that it is not a reflection at all. The city is real, and it is calling to him. Whispers tell us that this city once stood upon the land. Its people, the children of tides, built homes close to the shore, believing the ocean to be divine. A living being that breathed in storms and slept in calm. They spoke to it, offered it pearls and songs, trusted it to return what it took. But pride crept in as it always does. They built monuments taller than waves, and temples whose steps the tide could never reach. They sang louder than the sea itself. And one day the ocean grew still. For 3 days and nights, not a ripple disturbed its surface. The people rejoiced, believing they had mastered its silence. On the 4th night, the water rose, slow and soundless, and covered them all. Yet the sea, being both cradle and grave, did not destroy them, kept them. Their city sank whole, and within its coral walls, the people continued to live, their lungs learning to breathe the breath of tides. Their voices became currents, their songs the hum of the deep. And so the ocean kept its children, hidden beneath the veil of waves. Ionas lowers a small bell into the sea, a sailor's charm meant to summon fair winds. But instead of sinking, it floats upright and begins to ring. The tone is deep, almost human. The water beneath his ship shimmers, and from the depths, he sees shapes rising. Not fish, not shadows, but lights, drifting upward in spirals. He leans closer, and then, through the water, he sees faces. Calm, luminous, neither alive nor dead. Faces looking upward, eyes open, as if in prayer. He hears their voices, though no lips move. A single line, repeated like a tide. Do not look down with fear. All that falls, falls toward home. The ship tilts. The air thickens. The stars above him scatter like spilled coins. He grips the railing, but the sea no longer feels like water. Feels like memory, heavy, soft, inevitable. He lets go. The descent is not cold. It is warm, like being remembered. He opens his eyes to find himself walking, though there is no ground, only slow, liquid light. The city surrounds him, vast and glowing. Towers of coral curve like ribs. Bridges of shell arch over gardens of anemone that sway in the silent rhythm of unseen winds. At the city's heart stands a great hall carved from pearl. Inside, a throne of stone lies empty. Around it drift figures clothed in blue shadow, their eyes filled with the calm of those who have forgotten the difference between yesterday and tomorrow. One approaches him, a woman crowned with sea glass, her hair drifting like smoke. When she speaks, her voice is the sound of waves retreating over sand. You have come from above. You carry the noise of time. He bows without meaning to. I heard your bells. She smiles. We ring them so the world will not forget that silence is alive. He looks around, awe softening into sorrow. Why do you stay here? The woman lifts her hand. 1,000 bubbles rise from her palm, each holding an image. The faces of the living above, the tides, the stars. We do not stay. We continue in another rhythm. We are what the sea remembers when it dreams. He follows her through the halls. Everywhere the water hums, not with sound, but with feeling. Every wall vibrates gently, as if in time with the heartbeat of the world. At the base of the city, he finds a vast bell made of stone and light. Its rim glows faintly, its surface covered in symbols that shift like sand. This is the first sound, the woman says, the ocean's memory of creation. When it rings, the world begins again. She looks at him. Would you hear it? He hesitates. What happens if I do? Her gaze softens. You will remember that you are not separate. He nods. She touches the bell. The note that rises is not a sound but a surrender. A vibration that passes through every bone, every thought, every moment he has ever lived. He sees his childhood, his voyages, the faces of all he has lost, all drifting upward like bubbles of light. He feels no sorrow, only peace. The note fades into silence. The woman's form dissolves, her voice lingering in his mind like foam on sand. You will rise again, as all things do. But remember, the sea keeps only what listens. When Ionas wakes, he is lying on a quiet shore. His ship is gone. The tide laps gently at his feet. In his hand, he holds a single shell, black as night, humming softly when pressed to his ear. He listens. The hum deepens, and for a moment, he hears them. The bells, the voices, the slow music of the deep. Then, like the tide itself, it retreats. He rises and walks inland. He never sails again. But each night, when the wind turns and the sea breathes against the cliffs, he can still hear the sound. Faint, loving, eternal. Some say the kingdom beneath the waves still exists, watching us from below. Others believe it was never a city at all, but the ocean's way of teaching us how to remember gently, not with sight but with surrender. And sometimes, on still nights when the moon lies unbroken on the water, sailors hear the toll of distant bells. Soft, slow, kind. They say those are not warnings but invitations, the sea reminding us that every end is a return. Perhaps the kingdom was never lost. Perhaps it simply chose the deeper silence, the one that hums beneath our dreams, calling us softly home. It is said that on the edge of a desert plateau, where the cliffs fall away into salt and wind, there stands a monastery carved entirely from the rock. Its walls are pale, almost white, its corridors lined with lamps that have no wicks, no oil, no flame. Yet each one burns with a steady, living light. The monks who dwell there say the lamps are kept alive not by fire, but by memory. They call it the light that remembers shadows. The story is older than any empire. The first pilgrims who came to this place were wanderers lost in the dunes, guided by a single glow on the horizon. They reached the cliffs at dawn and found a cave filled with light so gentle that it did not hurt their eyes. And when they stepped into it, they found their shadows, long, soft, and shimmering, moving not behind them, but beside them. They built their monastery there, believing that they had found the meeting point between darkness and illumination, where light did not conquer shadow, but kept it company. Our story begins with a monk named Saren. He is young by the monastery's measure, but old in his silences. He spends his days polishing the lamps, his nights writing prayers he never signs. He has never left the cliffs, and he never wonders why. His voice is soft, his steps lighter than dust. He believes he is content. But one evening, while tending to the lamps in the inner hall, he notices something that makes him pause. One of the lamps is dimming. The flame, if it can be called that, flickers, folds inward, and trembles as though remembering something painful. The air around it cools. He cups his hands around it, whispering the prayer of renewal. Light, remember light. But the glow does not grow stronger. It fades into a pulse, then a breath, and then nothing. For the first time in his life, the monastery holds a shadow. The elders gather, their robes whispering against the floor. They stare at the dark lamp in silence. None of them speak at first. Then the eldest, a woman with eyes like sand-polished glass, says softly, "It is the first time in 500 years that the light has forgotten itself." She turns to Saren. "You will go to the root of the flame," she says, "to the chamber below the world, and you will ask it why." Saren bows, though his heart trembles. He knows of the chamber only through stories, the vault beneath the monastery where the first light was born. Few have entered it, and none have spoken of what they saw. He takes a single lamp, one still burning, and descends the carved stair that spirals into darkness. The air grows colder with each step. The walls glisten faintly, not with moisture, but with light caught in stone, reflections from fires that once were. He passes chambers filled with relics of light, mirrors blackened by age, glass vessels containing the last breath of extinguished lamps, tablets inscribed with words that shimmer faintly when seen from the corner of the eye. Finally, he reaches a door carved from crystal, so clear that it seems to be made of frozen water. He pushes it open. Inside, a vast cavern opens before him, the root of the flame. There is no fire here, only a single column of pale light rising from the ground, so bright and yet so gentle that it casts no shadow. Around it lie hundreds of dark lamps, their light long departed. He kneels at the edge of the column. Its glow feels alive, warm as breath, soft as a heartbeat. He whispers, "Why have you left us?" The light flickers and a voice answers, not through air, but through the pulse beneath his skin. "I have not left. You have simply forgotten how to see." He lowers his head, trembling. "What must we remember?" The voice hums like the sea inside a shell. "You polish the lamps, but you do not look at the shadows they cast. Light that forgets its shadow forgets why it was born." He closes his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he sees images. The desert under starlight, the monks moving through corridors with lamps in hand, each casting a faint twin beside them. He sees how, in their pursuit of purity, they have banished every shadow from the monastery, until the light has grown lonely. He opens his eyes. The column glows softer, turning from white to gold. He understands. Light cannot live without the memory of darkness. It must hold shadow gently, not destroy it. He returns to the upper halls, his lamp glowing with a warmer tone than before. The elders wait in silence. Saren bows and says, "The flame has not died. It has withdrawn. It wants us to remember what it means to see." The eldest frowns. "We have never let darkness enter these halls." That is why the light grows weary, Saren replies. He raises the lamp. Its glow spills over the floor. Soft, honey-colored, imperfect. Shadows rise where there were none, trembling like old memories stretching after sleep. The monks gasp, but the elder only watches. The shadows curl gently along the walls, not menacing, not cold, but alive. In their folds, the light burns brighter. That night, for the first time in centuries, the monks extinguish half their lamps. They eat by twilight, pray by dusk, and sleep beneath a ceiling touched by both glow and shade. The monastery feels different, fuller, quieter, more human. And in the hall where the lamp first went dark, the flame rekindles on its own. It burns warmer than before, steady and soft, as if breathing again after a long silence. Saren sits before it until dawn. He realizes that he no longer fears the dark corners of the hall. He sees now that light is not a conquest but a conversation. When the first sunbeam touches the cliff outside, it does not blind, it blends. Shadow and radiance meet and the world looks whole. Whispers tell us that years later, when Saren had grown old, he became the last keeper of the lamps. Before his death, he left a final writing carved upon the wall of the inner chamber. Light is only holy when it remembers where it came from. Even stars are born in darkness. And when they die, they do not vanish, they return home. After he passed, the monks sealed the chamber with his lamp still burning. It has never gone out. Sometimes, travelers who pass the cliffs at night say they see a faint gold glow shining through the stone. They mistake it for a campfire or a star fallen low. But those who know the story bow their heads and whisper a prayer, not for light, but for balance. Perhaps the light that remembered shadows was never meant to illuminate the world, but to remind it that illumination is not the absence of night. For even now, beneath the earth and above it, every flame holds a memory of the dark that gave it birth. Every sunrise carries the scent of the long, tender night before it. And when the last star burns out, and all light fades into silence, what remains will not be nothingness, but the first breath of shadow remembering the shape of light. Perhaps it was never meant to shine without darkness, but to show us that even in the deepest night, the heart keeps a small, steady glow, the light that remembers its shadow and refuses to forget. The night is almost still now. The world exhales softly, like an old instrument finally set down. One by one, the stories fade. The library beneath the dust, the city of echoes, the temple that listened, the door without a wall, the light that remembered its shadow. All of them drift back into the dark they were born from. Not lost, only resting. And here, in the hush between breath and dream, something begins to glow. Not a flame, not a star, but the gentle awareness that what we call history is not written only in stone or ink or blood. It is written in silence, in the spaces between heartbeats, in the pause before a word, in the quiet knowing that hums beneath the world's noise. It is said that every secret, once told, returns to the earth like rain, that the dust of forgotten empires becomes the soil from which new wonder grows. And perhaps that is what these tales have always been. Not warnings, not myths, but small seeds of memory waiting to bloom in whoever listens. Somewhere, beneath your own thoughts, you can still hear them, the faint echo of the obsidian stone, the sigh of the sea remembering its kingdom, the flicker of lamps that burn with both light and shadow. They are not gone. They have simply turned inward, into that hidden chamber inside you where mystery sleeps. The ancients believed that the world began not with sound, but with listening, that creation itself was the first act of attention, a great stillness so complete that the smallest breath became divine. And maybe that is why we tell stories in the dark, not to explain the world, but to feel it breathing with us. Each whisper, each image, each echo you have heard tonight is part of that same quiet pulse, the rhythm that binds the living and the lost, the known and the never known, the light and the shadow. So now, as the stars lean closer and the world grows slow around you, let the stories fade into the softness of sleep. Let the library close its doors again beneath the sand. Let the echoes fall silent in their crystal city. Let the map fold back into itself, and the temple listen once more without reply. Let the monks paint their heavens in peace, the clock keep its gentle forward time, and the sea hum quietly beneath the moon. For every secret that was hidden is never truly gone. It only changes shape, waiting for another dreamer to find it again. Perhaps, as you drift now between waking and dreaming, you are walking through that same unseen garden, where forgetting becomes forgiveness, and silence becomes the purest kind of remembrance. Perhaps the night itself is listening to you, to the rhythm of your breathing, the small, unspoken stories held behind your ribs. And perhaps that is the oldest mystery of all, that the universe does not forget us. It listens, it waits, it holds. The stars above you are not distant. They are the eyes of old memories, watching quietly, patiently. They have seen every empire rise and fall, every river dry and return, every heart break and mend and dream again. Their light is not far away. It is ancient sunlight, traveling across time to remind you that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost. And so this night, this story, this journey, ends as all true stories do, not with an ending, but with a return to stillness, the kind of stillness that hums with everything that ever was, the kind that listens back. So close your eyes, let the echoes settle, let the light dim, let the dust fall gently over the words we've spoken. Beneath it all, something remains, quiet, sacred, infinite, the breath before the next beginning. Good night, dreamer, and may the silence remember you kindly.